one of which is standing in front of you now, although he's wearing the wrong shirt. Excuse that, but look at his slides, not his shirt. Look at his sexy beard. It does. So, Login VSI in there. After this session, we're splitting into 2 tracks. So the other track is in the room next to the sponsors, where we've got some on optimal gateway routing. Sounds NetScaler-ish to me. And then impact of SASE and EUC with Aidan and Ronnie. So that's at 1:25. So there's 2 sessions in there, and then we've got Lee and John in here, and then Michael. So you can make your choice. Remember to do your session feedback, and then we will disclose the pub venue at coffee break. Over to Lee.
Thanks, Neil. Okay. Oh, I am on. All right. Yeah. So I'm part of the steering committee, and I also work for Login VSI. So there you go. There's the reason for wearing a couple of different hats. So for those of you who don't know, Login VSI acquired a product. That product was called Hydra, and Hydra is an AVD and Windows 365 management solution. So that was about a year ago, and since then we've been adding functionality to this. And what I want to talk about today is visibility into AVD sessions, resource utilization, and also automation. So like automatically creating master images, gold templates, that sort of thing. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Lee Jeffries. I'm a senior solutions architect for Login VSI, part of the MVP program and the VIPP program. Go on, Chris, do a woo. Current member of Go EUC. I always talk about Go EUC as part of my introduction. Those of you that don't know Go EUC, pop it in Google. You will find a website, and we write blogs and do research on industry topics. Things like Intune app deployment, which SKU is the best SKU, is a V7 better than a V6, things like that. And we do that because it's really part of our jobs. We all are techie geeks, and we love doing this sort of research, but it answers real industry questions. So go and check that out. Now, when I'm not being a techie nerd, which is probably only about 10% of the time, a little bit more at the moment because I'm training for an Ironman in September, I'm out running and doing triathlons and things like that. So I had to grow a beard so that I don't look like I'm ill, because I'm losing weight at a rapid rate. So let's dive in, right? I've got some new slides. These are all nice new marketing slides. You might have noticed there's a bit of a rebrand. Hydra didn't really have an identity like a logo, but it has now because our marketing team have given it one. So we've got these nice new, I don't know what it is, like a H blob type thing. Am I a fan? Not sure yet. Doesn't matter. It's going to stay anyway. So what do I want to talk about? I've got 15 minutes to sort of somehow wow you. And it's about running AVD and Windows 365. Is it easy? I think from Neil's presentation that you might have seen earlier, it's actually not very easy to run AVD and Windows 365, even though Windows 365 is just a SaaS service. He's talked about some of the challenges that he has in an enterprise environment where you've got things like security and audibility, and you need all of those things, or auditability. So what we're finding with these sorts of solutions is you've got different management planes to manage Windows 365 and AVD, different ways of actually rolling things out, patching things, what's your app deployment solution that you're going to use across these different platforms. Are you just going to Intune everything? Oh dear, what about multi-session? What about single session? How do I glue all this stuff together? The aim of Hydra is to give you some simplicity in those areas. And we find costing is always a bit of a sore point. So Hydra has an auto-scaling engine that's going to help with some of that. So really, these sort of 4 areas are where Hydra sits in helping you. There are other vendors in the market that do this sort of thing. So we're probably, I'd say, relatively new because Hydra was really considered a community tool before Login VSI acquired it. So anyone that's heard of it before may be a little bit dismissive and say, hey, that's a community solution, why are you looking at that? It's not anymore. We've got enterprise level support, we've got solutions architects, lots of developers. And these are the 4 areas that it performs well in. So auto-scaling and cost control. We can turn off those AVD machines when you're not using them. It's got its own auto-scaling functionality and engine, but it's also got like a capacity scaling, so it can spin up additional machines as and when like there's a bit of a boost. for a requirement or a need to add more resources. It also allows you to manage those machines, obviously turn them on and off, all those sorts of things, but it has an agent that you can deploy. When you deploy that agent on a Windows 365 machine or an AVD machine, you get real-time visibility into the processes running, resource utilization, and of course the user sessions that are actually connected. So that is actually really valuable because with things like Azure Monitor or just the Azure backplane, you don't get real-time metrics, and sometimes they're sort of, they're averaged. So you don't get all the detail that you need. Image management is something that's very tricky. Everybody talks about that. You're coming from Citrix or Omnissa, it's a very mature solution. You're used to managing images in a very particular way. You don't have those things in AVD natively. That's a pain in the backside. So Hydra will give you something called scripts and collections. Scripts are literally PowerShell scripts you can add. It also has Winget integration. But you can build a collection, which is like an automated set of tasks, and that collection can be run across a host pool or when you build a machine, lots of different types of hooks. So it lets you streamline that image management process by being able to schedule when you update images and things like that. Lastly, if you're an MSP, it actually has multi-tenant support out of the box. So single product, multi-tenancy, doesn't matter how many Azure tenants you've got, you just create a service principal, plug this into it, it will evaluate all of your Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 resources, and you can manage them and get that visibility. But specifically, 2 platforms, Windows 365 AVD, 1 control point. What we have here with session visibility is really actually looking at all the sessions you've got connected with AVD and Windows 365, and we can dive in and we can look exactly what's going on in that session. What's your latency? What's your bandwidth consumption for your connection? And then lastly, what is your user input delay, which is all about applications and how quickly they respond. I'm not just going to bore you with slides. I will jump into the product. That's why I plugged in my own laptop. Secondly, I'll talk to you about that automation process, how images can be built, how they can be scheduled, and you can actually have almost like an evergreen strategy for some of those applications. Now, some of you out there will talk about other ways of installing apps, and that is very valid. At the moment, it's just Winget, but it's going to be increased. We'll have other integrations with things like app volumes, Flex app. That's the plan on the roadmap. Oh, I hate slides like this, right? Will it save you up to 70%? It might. It depends how your environment is structured, right? But yes, it absolutely will. From a marketing standpoint, yes, 70%. From a techie standpoint, it might do. It depends what you do and how you work, what SKUs you use, which storage you have. So what it actually does is it switches the disk on the VM when it's powered off, and it auto-scales them. The auto-scaling is pretty granular. You can tweak a lot of different options. The main thing is your management. You're going to save time, which then is attributed to a cost saving because your resources will spend time doing other things, and that is really the biggest part of it. So marketing bump out of the way. Product demo. Let's dive in and have a look at Hydra. Is the Wi-Fi going to let me down? Now, usually here I always do live demos, even if the Wi-Fi is not so good everywhere I go, because if it works, well, you're never going to remember it, are you? So if it doesn't work, you will. So what we have here, bunch of host pools. We've got different host pools for different things. You can see live capacity, some of the how many machines we've got running. We can dig into that host pool. We can see things like the auto-scaling actions, what's been going on. Red line is the capacity of the host pool, how many machines you have available, how many sessions a machine supports. And the blue line is the active user sessions. Down at the bottom here, you can see our machines. Nice. We can dig into any of these machines and we can see live processes running on that machine. This is updated every 5 seconds. As I mentioned, we're not using Azure for this. We actually have an agent we deploy, and that's what we're using. That agent is the thing that lets us run things like scripts against these machines, and I'm sure that'll be developed to give us more functionality in the future. So I can look at my processes, I can look at my resource utilization, and we're really just looking at 3 key things: CPU, memory, and disk. CPU and processor and disk queue length, and then we've got CPU and memory usage. You'll be able to understand, do I have a CPU issue, memory issue, or a disk problem? So always storage on Azure, just for reference. So I can dive into those user sessions. There they are. Now, Kyle is out on the booth, and I said to him, please make sure your cloud PC is always connected. So on the demo, I can show like real live, and he's disconnected. So thank you, Kyle, who is not in the room. But what I would be able to see if he was connected was something along these lines. So the reason I like to use Kyle is because the Wi-Fi is very nice in this building, and his latency to his desktop, which is in this region, is actually around about 120 milliseconds. So I can see his processes in particular, but he's not working or doing anything. I can see the system utilization. Again, he's really not doing anything. We need to have a word. So if you see him on the booth, please remind him he's not really doing anything. But the key bit is I can understand resource utilization. I can also understand if it's a network condition. I've got bandwidth and I've got latency. This little bit down the bottom here, this user input delay, sounds like it should be a network metric, but it's actually not. It's built into the RDP stack, and it's actually a metric that counts how long a process is in a wait time for or a block time. So if you've got a client application with a back-end SQL database and the SQL database is hanging, then that client application is going to hang. And this is what it records. It actually records how long that process hangs for. So you can actually decide from this, have I got a resource problem? Have I got a network issue? Or is it an application? It doesn't tell you which application, which would be nice, but it does tell you it's an app issue. So you know where you need to go to next. So you're not guessing when they say, my desktop is slow. You will be able to ask the right questions very quickly using these real-time metrics. So that's our visibility into sessions. Of course, we can control them, log them off, reset FSLogix profiles, all the fun stuff. But what about images? So I mentioned we have scripts inside Hydra. These are built-in scripts, these ones you see here, for optimizing the Windows OS and for doing Windows updates. Now, there's lots of options in here for you to be able to add pretty much anything. You can use a managed identity in Azure, and you can run your scripts with that managed identity, which means you can pretty much run any sort of PowerShell script to do something in Azure. However, the thing that I'm focusing on in particular, applications. Anyone know about Evergreen? It's a PowerShell module for installing apps. I see lots of nods, brilliant. This is a PowerShell script that uses Evergreen to install 7-zip, Notepad++, Putty, and Greenshot. It's pretty adaptable. If you're a scripter, it's great. If you're not a scripter, I've got a task down here, or a collection down here, for actually building and updating a master image. I think I went too far. There it is. Okay. I still haven't found it, actually. All right, maybe I haven't. Or someone's gone in the demo lab and deleted my stuff. So, which is absolutely possible. On the fly, let's create one. Because if your demo doesn't work, improvise. All right, if I go down the bottom here, I just copied one of the other ones. Lee's failed demo collection. And in here, I can define a list of actions. All right. No, I'm in the wrong section. That's why it's not working. Collections. Right. So I have my script. My script can install some apps from Evergreen. Then I define it in a collection. Ta-da. A collection is a group of scripts or a group of actions. And look, there's one here for building a master image. So you'll see here on the left, I've got a very quick list of tasks. So this is a little bit like an SCCM task sequence, just a little bit more simplistic. I say that, and I know it's old school, but like everybody love is a strong word, I guess, but it worked, and it was easy, and everybody was familiar with it. So in here, what I'm doing is when I build a new machine, I'm putting it in drain mode. I'm then deploying the Hydra agent. I need that for my metrics. I'm applying some OS settings, which is like FSLogix config, stuff that you don't do with Intune or anything you want to bed into this. And then I'm installing some apps. Apps, like I said, are integrated with Winget, so there's nothing complex about this. You literally just search for the app you want. I don't know. Yeah, I knew I'd pick a word that didn't have anything. But you search for an app, it'll find it, pop it in the list on the right. It'll install it. So it's really simple if some of these apps for like a base image are available publicly. I restart the machine and then I run some scripts. I'm updating my Windows OS, I'm optimizing the image, and then I'm restarting the VM, popping it back in drain mode and deallocating it. So when I build a new machine, I can actually have like a template host pool, build a new machine, it'll run this for me, and I've got something that's ready. Now I need to update this on a regular basis. So now I've got a different collection, which I can trigger. And instead of installing apps, it's just updating them. So those package manager apps are just updated. Now, if I jump into the image builder, I will show you image definitions. And here is one I made earlier. If I jump into this, what I'll actually have here is a machine I built literally when I was sitting at the back of the room earlier. And when I update this machine, this is the collection that I'm running against it. So that's that golden master update. I'm then saying, hey, when you do that, I want you to pop this in a compute gallery for me, and I want you to keep this many versions. The really cool thing, and this is the differentiator, right, that I love. I just click the clock and I say, when do I want to do that on a regular basis? And it will just do it for me, which means I have like an evergreen approach to my image updates. I can then assign them to host pools or Windows 365 machines. So in my host pools, for example, this one, if I actually dive into the config for this host pool, you will see I have a bunch of template options for creating new machines. Now, I told you those collections can be used in a number of different ways. I can use them every time I build a new machine. So I can have a collection to build a basic template image, and then I can have another collection to layer on a bunch of apps. So if I've got different host pools for different reasons with different apps, I can support that too, and I only have one image to maintain because I just layer on the differences for each host pool. But I can also do things like supporting ephemeral disks. This host pool is non-persistent, so at the end of the day, out of hours, I kill everything. Ephemeral disks are free, so you're not paying for any storage. These things are great. Are they highly available? Someone asked me, like, do you always get an ephemeral disk if you request one? I don't know. I always have. I mean, I don't know what the availability is like. Anybody else have any experience in that area? All right. Neil? Ephemeral disks? Yep. All right. So there's lots of options in here, including deploying GPU extensions. But when it comes to Windows 365, we have a custom images section. And it's really, really straightforward. I can just say, I want to add a custom image from a compute gallery, bearing in mind that's where I store my automated images. And I can just run through this, and it will give me all of the options I need to be able to pick a version from that compute gallery. So I can actually version control my new Windows 365 cloud PCs, bearing in mind they're persistent. But I think it's quite an important point. You're either going to roll out from a marketplace image and then layer on everything with Intune. Go EUC has an article about how long Intune takes to deploy apps. I wrote it. Go read that. Sometimes it takes a little while. And that's a problem, obviously, if you're trying to make desktops available relatively quickly. So, in short, visibility into user sessions, automation for images. I'll open it up for questions. Anybody want to know anything about Hydra or about triathlons?
Do you have any kind of reference architecture diagrams and stuff available as yet for Hydra, like the deployment of high availability, regions, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? So there's no high availability right now. You'd have to just deploy 2 instances.
Yeah.
However, the pricing structure, which I didn't talk about for Hydra, is based on concurrent user sessions, which means we don't charge you per named user. You're actually just charged for the users that actually logged in, and it's the highest number of users in a concurrent month. So you could deploy 2 instances, and if it's not used, you're just paying for the resources that sit there anyway. You'd have 2 different URLs, but if you wanted to, you could use Azure infrastructure to load balance between those 2 URLs. That's another good question. So we don't have anything for like proper high availability yet, but I think it's a good point, and I'll feed it back to the product team because I like it. But we do have reference architecture, yes, docs.loginvsi.com, completely brand new document library specifically to support this product. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.